Chapter 8. Okonkwo did not taste any food for 2 days after the death of Ikemefuna. He drank palm wine from morning till night, and his eyes were red and fierce like the eyes of a rat when it was caught by the tail and dashed against the floor. He called his son, Nwoye, to sit with him in his obi. But the boy was afraid of him and slipped out of the hut as soon as he noticed him dozing. He did not sleep at night. He tried not to think about Ikemefuna, but the more he tried the more he thought about him. Once he got up from bed and walked about his compound. But he was so weak that his legs could hardly carry him. He felt like a drunken giant walking with the limbs of a mosquito. Now and then a cold shiver descended on his head and spread down his body. On the third day he asked his second wife, Ikuhi, to roast plantains for him. She prepared it the way he liked with slices of oil bean and fish. "You have not eaten for 2 days," said his daughter Ezinma when she brought the food to him. "So you must finish this." She sat down and stretched her legs in front of her. Okonkwo ate the food absent-mindedly. She should have been a boy, he thought as he looked at his 10-year-old daughter. He passed her a piece of fish. "Go and bring me some cold water," he said. Ezinma rushed out of the hut, chewing the fish, and soon returned with a bowl of cool water from the earthen pot in her mother's hut. Okonkwo took the bowl from her and gulped the water down. He ate a few more pieces of plantain, and pushed the dish aside. "Bring me my bag," he asked, and Ezinma brought his goatskin bag from the far end of the hut. He searched in it for his snuff bottle. It was a deep bag and took almost the whole length of his arm. It contained other things apart from his snuff bottle. There was a drinking horn in it, and also a drinking gourd, and they knocked against each other as he searched. When he brought out the snuff bottle he tapped it a few times against his kneecap before taking out some snuff on the palm of his left hand. Then he remembered that he had not taken out his snuff spoon. He searched his bag again and brought out a small, flat, ivory spoon, with which he carried the brown snuff to his nostrils. Ezinma took the dish in one hand and the empty water bowl in the other and went back to her mother's hut. She should have been a boy, Okonkwo said to himself again. His mind went back to Ikemefuna and he shivered. If only he could find some work to do he would be able to forget. But it was the season of rest between the harvest and the next planting season. The only work that men did at this time was covering the walls of their compound with new palm fronds. And Okonkwo had already done that. He had finished it on the very day the locusts came, when he had worked on one side of the wall and Ikemefuna and Nwoye on the other. "When did you become a shivering old woman?" Okonkwo asked himself. "You who are known in all the 9 villages for your valor in war. How can a man who has killed 5 men in battle fall to pieces because he has added a boy to their number? Okonkwo, you have become a woman indeed." He sprang to his feet, hung his goatskin bag on his shoulder and went to visit his friend, Abirika. Abirika was sitting outside under the shade of an orange tree making thatches from leaves of the raffia palm. He exchanged greetings with Okonkwo and led the way into his obi. "I was coming over to see you as soon as I finished that thatch," he said, rubbing off the grains of sand that clung to his thighs. "Is it well?" Okonkwo asked. "Yes," replied Abirika. "My daughter Suta is coming today and I hope we will clinch the matter of the bride price. I want you to be there." Just then Abirika's son, Maduka, came into the obi from outside, greeted Okonkwo and turned towards the compound. "Come and shake hands with me," Okonkwo said to the lad. "Your wrestling the other day gave me much happiness." The boy smiled, shook hands with Okonkwo, and went into the compound. "He will do great things," Okonkwo said. "If I had a son like him I should be happy. I am worried about Nwoye." A bowl of pounded yams can throw him in a wrestling match. His two younger brothers are more promising. But I can tell you, Abirika, that my children do not resemble me. Where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana tree dies? If Ezenma had been a boy, I would have been happier. She has the right spirit. You worry yourself for nothing, said Abirika. The children are still very young. Nwoye is old enough to impregnate a woman. At his age I was already fending for myself. No, my friend, he is not too young. A chick that will grow into a cock can be spotted the very day it hatches. I have done my best to make Nwoye grow into a man, but there is too much of his mother in him. Too much of his grandfather, Abirika thought, but he did not say it. The same thought also came to Okonkwo's mind. But he had long learned how to lay that ghost. Whenever the thought of his father's weakness and failure troubled him, he expelled it by thinking about his own strength and success. And so he did now. His mind went to his latest show of manliness. I cannot understand why you refuse to come with us to kill that boy, he asked Abirika. Because I did not want to, Abirika replied sharply. I had something better to do. You sound as if you question the authority and the decision of the oracle, who said he should die. I do not. Why should I? But the oracle did not ask me to carry out its decision. But someone had to do it. If we were all afraid of blood, it would not be done. And what do you think the oracle would do then? You know very well, Okonkwo, that I am not afraid of blood, and if anyone tells you that I am, he is telling a lie. And let me tell you one thing, my friend. If I were you, I would have stayed at home. What you have done will not please the earth. It is the kind of action for which the goddess wipes out whole families. The earth cannot punish me for obeying her messenger, Okonkwo said. A child's fingers are not scalded by a piece of hot yam, which its mother puts into its palm. That is true, Abirika agreed. But if the oracle said that my son should be killed, I would neither dispute it nor be the one to do it. They would have gone on arguing had Ofoweju not come in just then. It was clear from his twinkling eyes that he had important news. But it would be impolite to rush him. Abirika offered him a lobe of the kola nut he had broken with Okonkwo. Ofoweju ate slowly and talked about the locusts. When he finished his kola nut, he said, "The things that happen these days are very strange." "What has happened?" asked Okonkwo. "Do you know Obuefin Dalu?" Ofoweju asked. Obuefin Dalu of Aya village, Okonkwo and Abirika said together. "He died this morning," said Ofoweju. "That is not strange." "He was the oldest man in Aya," said Abirika. "You are right," Ofoweju agreed. "But you ought to ask why the drum has not beaten to tell Umuofia of his death." "Why?" asked Abirika and Okonkwo together. "That is the strange part of it. You know his first wife who walks with a stick?" "Yes. She is called Ozoemena." "That is so," said Ofoweju. "Ozoemena was, as you know, too old to attend Ndalu during his illness. His younger wives did that. When he died this morning, one of these women went to Ozoemena's hut and told her. She rose from her mat, took her stick and walked over to the obi. She knelt on her knees and hands at the threshold and called her husband, who was laid on a mat. Obuefin Dalu, she called 3 times and went back to her hut. When the youngest wife went to call her again to be present at the washing of the body, she found her lying on the mat, dead. "That is very strange, indeed," said Okonkwo. "They will put off Ndalu's funeral until his wife has been buried. That is why the drum has not been beaten to tell Umuofia. It was always said that Ndalu and Ozoemena had one mind," said Abirika. I remember when I was a young boy there was a song about them. He could not do anything without telling her. I did not know that, said Okonkwo. I thought he was a strong man in his youth. He was indeed, said Ofoeju. Okonkwo shook his head doubtfully. He led Umuofia to war in those days, said Abirika. Okonkwo was beginning to feel like his old self again. All that he required was something to occupy his mind. If he had killed Ikemfuna during the busy planting season, or harvesting, it would not have been so bad. His mind would have been centered on his work. Okonkwo was not a man of thought but of action. But in absence of work, talking was the next best. Soon after Ofoeju left, Okonkwo took up his goatskin bag to go. I must go home to tap my palm trees for the afternoon, he said. Who taps your tall trees for you? Asked Abirika. Amazulike, replied Okonkwo. Sometimes I wish I had not taken the Ozo title, said Abirika. It warms my heart to see these young men killing palm trees in the name of tapping. It is so indeed, Okonkwo agreed. But the law of the land must be obeyed. I don't know how we got that law, said Abirika. In many other clans a man of title is not forbidden to climb the palm tree. Here we say he cannot climb the tall tree, but he can tap the short one standing on the ground. It is like Dimaragana, who would not lend his knife for cutting up dog meat, because the dog was taboo to him, but offered to use his teeth. I think it is good that our clan holds the Ozo title in high esteem, said Okonkwo. In those other clans you speak of, Ozo is so low that every beggar takes it. I was only speaking in jest, said Abirika. In Obame and an into the title is worth less than 2 cowries. Every man wears the thread of title on his ankle, and does not lose it even if he steals. They have indeed soiled the name of Ozo, said Okonkwo as he rose to go. It will not be very long now before my in-laws come, said Abirika. I shall return very soon, said Okonkwo, looking at the position of the sun. There were 7 men in Abirika's hut when Okonkwo returned. The suitor was a young man of about 25, and with him were his father and uncle. On Abirika's side were his 2 elder brothers and Maduka, his 16-year-old son. Ask Kakuk's mother to send us some kola nuts, said Abirika to his son. Maduka vanished into the compound like lightning. The conversation at once centered on him, and everybody agreed that he was as sharp as a razor. I sometimes think he is too sharp, said Abirika, somewhat indulgently. He hardly ever walks. He is always in a hurry. If you are sending him on an errand he flies away before he has heard half of the message. You are very much like that yourself, said his eldest brother. As our people say, when mother cow is chewing grass its young ones watch its mouth. Maduka has been watching your mouth. As he was speaking the boy returned, followed by a cook, his half-sister, carrying a wooden dish with 3 kola nuts and alligator pepper. She gave the dish to her father's eldest brother and then shook hands, very shyly, with her suitor and his relatives. She was about 16 and just right for marriage. Her suitor and his relatives surveyed her young body with expert eyes, as if to assure themselves that she was beautiful and ripe. She wore a coiffure which was done up into a crest in the middle of the head. Camwood was rubbed lightly into her skin, and all over her body were black patterns drawn with uli. She wore a black necklace which hung down in 3 coils just above her full, succulent breasts. On her arms were red and yellow bangles, and on her waist 4 or 5 rows of jijida, or waist beads. When she had shaken hands, or rather held out her hand to be shaken, she returned to her mother's hut to help with the cooking. Remove your jijida first, her mother warned as she moved near the fireplace to bring the pestle resting against the wall. Every day I tell you that jijida and fire are not friends. But you will never hear. You grew your ears for decoration, not for hearing. One of these days your jijida will catch fire on your waist, and then you will know. A cook moved to the other end of the hut and began to remove the waist beads. It had to be done slowly and carefully, taking each string separately, else it would break and the 1,000 tiny rings would have to be strung together again. She rubbed each string downwards with her palms until it passed the buttocks and slipped down to the floor around her feet. The men in the obi had already begun to drink the palm wine, which a cook's suitor had brought. It was a very good wine and powerful, for in spite of the palm fruit hung across the mouth of the pot to restrain the lively liquor, white foam rose and spilled over. "That wine is the work of a good tapper," said Okonkwo. The young suitor, whose name was Ibe, smiled broadly and said to his father, "Do you hear that?" He then said to the others, "He will never admit that I am a good tapper." "He tapped 3 of my best palm trees to death," said his father, Yuku. "That was about 5 years ago," said Ibe, who had begun to pour out the wine, "before I learned how to tap." He filled the first horn and gave to his father. Then he poured out for the others. Okonkwo brought out his big horn from the goatskin bag, blew into it to remove any dust that might be there, and gave it to Ibe to fill. As the men drank, they talked about everything except the thing for which they had gathered. It was only after the pot had been emptied that the suitor's father cleared his voice and announced the object of their visit. Abirika then presented to him a small bundle of short broomsticks. Yuku counted them. "They are 30. He asked. Abirika nodded in agreement. "We are at last getting somewhere," Yuku said, and then turning to his brother and his son he said, "Let us go out and whisper together." The 3 rose and went outside. When they returned, Yuku handed the bundle of sticks back to Abirika. He counted them. Instead of 30 there were now only 15. He passed them over to his eldest brother, Machi, who also counted them and said, "We had not thought to go below 30. But as the dog said, if I fall down for you and you fall down for me, it is play. Marriage should be a play, and not a fight, so we are falling down again." He then added 10 sticks to the 15 and gave the bundle to Yukbu. In this way a cook's bride price was finally settled at 20 bags of cowries. It was already dusk when the 2 parties came to this agreement. "Go and tell a cook's mother that we have finished," Abirika said to his son, Majuka. Almost immediately the woman came in with a big bowl of fufu. Abirika's second wife followed with a pot of soup, and Majuka brought in a pot of palm wine. As the men ate and drank palm wine, they talked about the customs of their neighbors. "It was only this morning," said Abirika, "that Okonkwo and I were talking about a bame and an inter, where titled men climb trees and pound fufu for their wives. All their customs are upside down. They do not decide bride price as we do, with sticks. They haggle and bargain as if they were buying a goat or a cow in the market." "That is very bad," said Abirika's eldest brother. "But what is good in one place is bad in another place. In Yumanso they do not bargain at all, not even with broomsticks. The suitor just goes on bringing bags of cowries until his in-laws tell him to stop. It is a bad custom because it always leads to a quarrel." "The world is large," said Okonkwo. "I have even heard that in some tribes a man's children belong to his wife and her family." "That cannot be," said Machi. "You might as well say that the woman lies on top of the man when they are making the children. It is like the story of white men who, they say, are white like this piece of chalk," said Abirika. He held up a piece of chalk, which every man kept in his obi, and with which his guests drew lines on the floor before they ate kola nuts. "And these white men, they say, have no toes." "And have you never seen them?" asked Machi. "Have you?" asked Abirika. One of them passes here frequently, said Machi. His name is Amadi. Those who knew Amadi laughed. He was a leper, and the polite name for leprosy was the white skin.